8th, 2020 Board of Adjustment meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Brink.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Jargis Johnson.
Here.
Culhane.
Hanson. Here. Aletsky. Present. Jargis Johnson. Here. Culhane.
Present.
Jargis Johnson. Here.
Where is that echo coming from? Ford.
Here.
And Spire, Dolly, and Kays are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Third item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 4th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Hanson.
Wait, this is Ford. There are some issues on page 5.
Thank you, Diana. I should have slowed down a little bit. Go ahead, Diana.
In the middle of page 5, the first voting in, the second voting in favor of, there's no motion above it. And then if you go down to the next one, voting in favor of, where it says Ford, Alexi, Dolly, and then voting against, only 8 board members are listed instead of 9. And then if you go down to the next one, it says voting in favor of Oletsky, Ford, motion carried, but it doesn't list anybody else but Oletsky and Ford.
Okay. And actually, so if you guys remember, that was the meeting where we had multiple motions made there, I think 6. We can go back and double check all of that. Thank you for noticing, Diana, and then we can just bring this back to at the next meeting.
Please call us back for an important
Sure.
message. You can reach us Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. toll free.
All right. Thank you for pointing that out, Diana. A little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we're going good. So I will
Postpone them.
we'll move on past item 3 onto item 4, our regular agenda. 4A is board consideration of a variance request at 116 South Lake Drive. Brandy, you want to take over?
Yes. Thank you, Brink. I just wanted to go back. Do we need a motion to postpone those minutes? Postpone action?
I think we can
Well,
just bring them back.
Okay.
We must need something because we had a motion and a second.
Should I rescind my motion?
Yeah, to not approve, but to postpone.
Okay, I'll make a motion to postpone the minutes from last meeting. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, and they're off to a good start. Even, I guess even if we just take back, I guess, the motions, and then we just bring it back. I mean, I don't know, though, it's out on the agenda. It might be cleaner to say we'll make a motion to postpone until the next Board of Adjustment meeting.
I'll do that.
I'll second that.
There you go.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Hanson.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Jargis Johnson.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 4A. We'll try this again. Brandy, I'll let you take over.
Okay, thank you, Brink. So, as it was stated, this is a variance request for the property at 116 South Lake Drive. The owner is looking at demolishing this storage shed and then adding on to the existing attached garage on the property. And so the variance is for a 7.2 foot setback when typically this is zoned R1 single family residential. Typically you need a 9-foot setback. So he is asking for the 1.2 foot variance for the side yard setback on the northwest side of the property. And just to note here too that the existing storage shed, actually where the garage will be added on to, it'll come to the same point. So it'll be, the garage will now be 35 feet wide, but it will still land where this existing storage shed exists today. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Do you know, did they have a variance for that shed when that was put in, or is that shed have a different setback?
I'm not aware of a variance. Nothing showed up in our 2002 forward for our database. There was a variance, though, on the adjacent property to the north, and that was granted in 2017 for a 4.8-foot side yard setback.
Thank you. You read my mind. That was going to be my next question. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And I assume all adjacent landowners were notified. I will open up the public hearing in case there are anyone, or is anyone that would like to speak in favor or against this item.
Yeah, if you guys have questions for him, he can come up.
Merle, I have a few questions.
Please state your name for the record too. Thanks.
Merle Schockert.
Okay, hey Merle, is the, are you measuring from the wall or the overhang for the 4-foot setback?
I'm assuming that whatever the contractor put in, I don't know the answer to that
Because
question.
you know, the roof is going to go this direction. Okay,
And
would
it
you?
is, I'll clarify there, because he's asking for a 1.2-foot setback, and they are showing that that would be from the wall.
That's correct. We do typically measure from the wall or from the foundation.
Okay, what I'm trying to get at is what, are you going to have rain gutters then, so that you direct the rain off of your roof so it flows onto your property instead of just going into the neighbor's property or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And that would also be required when we look at his building plans.
Are there any other questions for the applicant while we have him up here, or is there anyone else that wishes to say something either here or on the internet? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Personally, when I look at applications like this, I mean, one of the main things I try to look for is, you know, does it impede more than it previously did? And in this case, seeing the shed, in my opinion, it does not. And the second thing I like to look for is, does it conform with the neighborhood? In the neighborhood, there was a recent variance to the immediately adjacent property, so I just point those out. I don't know if there's any other comments by anyone.
Well, what I like is that it's garage to garage, so it's not impeding anybody's view.
This is Ford. I have a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
I looked at the staff report on page 11, which indicates in granting a variance, the board shall ascertain that the following criteria are met. And one is the staff has determined that reasonable use of the property will not be denied if this isn't approved. And also that there is no unnecessary hardship involved in not approving this. I think there's still appropriate land for reasonable use there if we don't approve this 1.2 or 1.5 foot variance. And myself, we aren't quite sure if the shed had a building permit or not, and a shed isn't as long as this garage will be. I would not personally include that shed in the original footprint of that garage. So those are the problems that I have with this application.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any other comments from the board members?
Brandy, how much yard space is on the other side, the south side? I guess I'm assuming that's south.
Looks like approximately 6, 5.8, but also to note that our GIS lines are not 100% accurate. But if we can look at even the application, no. It does appear to be less than what would be on that north side, even if the variance was approved for the garage addition.
Hearing no other comments from the board members, I will ask for a motion and a second for further discussion.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Hanson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Jargis Johnson,
Yes.
Culhane,
Yes.
Ford.
No.
Vote of 5 to 1, motion carries,
Fails,
fails, motion fails.
because it's 2/3 of the members, and so there's 7 members. And so you would, for conditional uses.
Is our Matt Roby, is he online with us tonight to confirm that, please?
Here he is.
Our parliamentarian? Oh, Matt, you must be, are you muted there?
I think.
Can't hear you, Matt.
Okay.
There you,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
yep.
Oh, and for the record, for Bill, I see Bill Spire joined, if you want to note that. It looks like Matt's reading, so do you want to state that?
For the record, Bill Spire has joined the meeting.
Is it too late for Bill to
You
vote?
say it was five votes yes passes regardless of the rule.
But, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that makes, okay. Thank you for that
5 out of 7 or
clarification.
5 out of 6 is still over 2/3, so it passes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So that motion passes, and then moving forward, we'll have Bill, so we'll have 7. But, so moving on, we'll move on to item 4B, board consideration, requesting the ability to rebuild an existing single-family residence at 1017 3rd Avenue Northwest in C3 Highway Commercial. Brandy?
Sounds good. I apologize for that confusion again. All right. So this property here, I will zoom out so we can get an overview. The property here at 1017 3rd Avenue Northwest, they're requesting a conditional use. And so currently, the property is zoned as C3 Highway Commercial. And you can see that an existing single-family residential home resides on the property. And that home was constructed in the 1924. So so we can assume that it pre-existed this zoning designation. So it is, it exists there today. Basically, what this conditional use is doing is allowing for a single-family residential structure to be rebuilt if a casualty that would destroy it more than 60% would occur. And so it's just really to have, for the home to have value. Yeah, with that, open it up for questions.
Thank you, Brandy. I do have a question. When we, as a city, created the R2A zoning district, was that property considered being part of the R2A since it was residential? I know right at the boundary lines, you know, they would kind of hit some residential, some commercial. I don't know if that was looked at. I mean, if you know.
I don't, and I looked at that as well, to get an idea of why it was not included with the R2A. But it does look like they just kind of went down that block and just split, between the highway commercial and the R2A. Assuming that they were thinking that this would be redeveloped as commercial properties.
There's not even an alley between the two properties, is there? Between the Cowboy and that house? So I think they just followed the streets.
Yeah.
And then the property behind it.
And do you know, did the applicant consider rezoning at all, or was that discussed?
It was, but this was the route that they wished to take. And then as far as rezoning as well, I mean, is that what we want? Either, I know with granting this conditional use, it does kind of allow that single-family house to exist in perpetuity until it would be redeveloped. So it really, if denied, you know, they could come back for a rezone to R2A. And I don't know if the applicant is here and would want to speak on that at all.
I will open the public hearing. If there is anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on behalf or against this item, please feel free to do so. And if there's any other comments from the board members.
This home has been there for so long, and it's been so well maintained. It's not like it's falling down house. It's always has been so well maintained throughout the years.
I'm just curious if we want to go with the R2A, since that would be consistent with what surrounds it, instead of R1. And that would still allow for. R1. Oh, this is R2 surrounding it.
But they want to keep it
I know,
commercial
and they
zone.
could still, but they could still build R1 in an R2.
Yeah.
So I think I would rather see it go to R2A to be consistent with the rest of it.
If they went to R2A to zoning, would they have to reapply?
Yes.
Okay. Is this faster than?
Yeah, well, because the conditional use is just one hearing by the Board of Adjustment, a rezone is an ordinance amendment, so it would go to the Plan Commission and then to council for 2 readings.
Brandy, without the applicant here, I just feel like we're second guessing what their motives is. Do you have a little more background on this, or shed some, I mean, is it just like you said, is it just the 1 meeting versus 2, or any idea what their motive is?
And I don't really want to speak on their behalf. And we did have conversation, though, about the 2 options. And I think it was just, I mean, they just decided to go this route. And it might have been for the time constraint.
Refinancing. This, I don't know for sure. I don't know anything about this. I'm just assuming like half of Watertown is doing right now is refinancing, and you have to be able to say it's legal non-conforming, so then it can go on the secondary market.
Well, that's a really good guess of what's happening. Typically on something like this, when someone's looking for this, it's either, you know, they're either looking to sell, looking to refinance, or looking to do an addition. And since we don't have a building permit, you know, I'm guessing it's one of the first 2. Which,
I'm just guessing, though. I don't know.
But again, if you were to zone it R2A, that makes in my opinion, the land more valuable. And you can still put your residential home back on should something happen to what's there now.
Chair,
yes, Commissioner.
Liam Culhane here.
To sort of respond to Commissioner Johnson, why don't we just do both? Why don't we grant the conditional use now and then set it for a rezone? That way we don't, get in the middle of whatever it is that was going on.
That's a good idea. We could initiate a rezone as the Board of Adjustment, can't we? Or is that a Plan Commission action that has the ability to initiate a rezone?
So, yeah, I think Matt, if he could weigh in on if that's an appropriate condition to place on an approval of a conditional use, is to request rezone.
That seems a little bit odd to me. I think that they would have the independent ability to decide whether or not to come forward and ask for it to be rezoned. But it could certainly be urged. I'm leery of making it a condition of this request.
Commissioner, or Chairman Brink,
Yes.
so we can't sua sponte or by ourselves rezone. It has to be based on application.
No, that's not correct. The board can initiate rezones.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not saying make it part of the condition. Let's grant the conditional use to allow them to get whatever this is, if it's a refinance or to sell or buy the house or whatever it is, and then initiate the rezone if we think that's appropriate, or at least initiate that discussion in the Plan Commission side.
And I did look it up just because there is a realtor involved with this application, and it looks like the house is on the market. As long as that's current.
No, that is a good idea. I mean, before we get too far ahead of ourselves on what we're going to do in the Plan Commission, I mean, we do have to vote on this particular item. I do have the public hearing open. So far, no one has spoken in favor or against, but it is still open if anyone would like to. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
I would move to deny the application, just on the basis that we're kind of put in the position to second guess what the applicant's motives are.
I'll second that. This is Ford.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion?
Will they be able to come back later on and show up at the meeting and tell us what they're talking about, but they'd have to reapply, correct?
I believe that reapplication cannot happen for 6 months.
But for a rezone request, they wouldn't have to wait for reapplication. They
That's
would just-
true.
Yeah, right.
Okay, got it.
Yes, so it's, in a sense, it's kind of the same thing. Other than, so if we would see the long-term redevelopment of this property as being commercial, then for as long as the house exists there, that it would remain the single-family home. Or do we want to rezone it to perpetuate that it would be a residential use?
One thing that the board could consider too is, being this how the applicant isn't here to speak to this, it certainly could be postponed to the next meeting. And then that way that would hopefully give the applicant a chance to appear in front of the board and state their reasoning why and exactly what they're seeking this for.
Stacy, at that point, could they ask for the R2 instead?
We would need a separate application and stuff for advertising, and we could certainly go through that with them and talk through that with them at the staff level. I do think it may make it a bit easier, but it is a board decision. You have, every right to deny this. It's just if there's something that we're missing, then there may be a problem coming back for a conditional use within that specified time frame. but staff would be happy to talk with the applicant and offer up the rezoning option.
I think because the home is for sale and a realtor is involved, I think we should hold off to give them an opportunity to come and talk to us and tell us what they want.
I would rescind my motion to, I guess, delay to give the applicant a chance to come before us.
So
Is that a motion to postpone then to the next meeting? And I think we can do that without re-advertising? Is that correct?
Matt?
Yeah, I believe that is correct. As long as this was properly noticed, that you wouldn't have to notice the next meeting.
Okay, but at that point, are we still going to be okay with just a conditional use then? Or do we want them to start over anyway and go to R2A to make it consistent?
I think that's going to be up to the applicant, but again, without them kind of voicing their opinion of what's clearer for that, I mean.
And this was their choice, was to take it as a conditional use. And I am going to pull up the comp plan to see if there's any guidance for us there as far as long-term redevelopment.
Chair,
Go ahead, Liam.
I mean, if we're inclined to rezone this, I don't understand why we don't just approve the conditional use. Because if we then subsequently rezone it, that makes the conditional use issue moot. And so we won't have done anything, and we won't have potentially harmed or created an additional hurdle or challenge for the applicant. So I mean, if everyone's thinking that we should rezone it anyways, sure, let's do that. But let's also grant this conditional use.
That's a good point, and I have my ordinance book open in front of me, and the more I'm kind of reading it, I don't even know if I agree that it needs to be rezoned. I mean, one of the conditional uses in the C3 is any and all permitted uses in the R1 and R3 zones, and typically when we look at conditional uses, we look at them as we've deemed these generally compatible with the surrounding, they just may need conditions, you know, and that's where we look at our conditions such as screening of refuse and lighting and stuff, which this single-family residence wouldn't really infringe on those. So the more I kind of read this ordinance as we think through this, I almost feel more inclined that this could be approved and wouldn't need to come back before us even for a rezone, but that's my thoughts.
Right, and you read that, you're reading the section that the conditional use that they are applying for. Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking at the chapter 21.28 and reading through the conditional uses.
And
Yeah.
it's specifically conditional use number 17 in the conditional use list for the C3 zoning district.
Correct, and that kind of goes back to, we, as a board and as a city, we've decided that these uses are generally compatible in this zone. So I think the question, for me at least, is not, is this house allowed? It's, should there be any conditions? Because that's what's before us today is the conditional use. So that's my thought. And my thought should be more, we should talk about what conditions are needed, if any.
Okay, so it reads, any and all permitted uses in the R1 single-family residential district or R3 multifamily residential district where such use existed prior to the adoption of this conditional use and where such conditional use, if granted, will be limited to the rebuilding or remodeling of such pre-existing use and specifically excluding any new construction otherwise permitted in either the R1 or R3 districts. So
my interpretation is I look at this property and I look at it and I say this meets the R1 criteria. It's adjacent to R2A. And when this ordinance was written, or when R2A was first written in 2006, It was written at that time that R2A could not be expanded upon, and that's probably why there is an R2A listed in this conditional use. Since 2006, actually it was about 3 or 4 years ago, we've allowed the expansion of R2A, but a conditional use like number 17 listed doesn't have R2A listed, it just goes from R1 to R3. But with that being said, I still think that this lot would fit the R1 criteria as single-family housing.
Yes, definitely. And that is right, R2A is a closed district, so even if they came back for the rezone, they would not be able to petition for R2A. It would have to be R2, which then we have a spot zone.
And as we sit right now, I believe the motion has been rescinded and we don't have a motion on the table. And the public hearing is closed, so if there is, of course, we can keep doing further discussion, but I would ask at some point that we have a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve the conditional use request. Culhane.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
All right. Culhane,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
and Spire. What was that? Spire? We can't quite understand. Okay. He has his hand up.
Seems we're having microphone problems, Commissioner Spire. You sound a little bit like Darth Vader coming through, so we apologize on our end not being able to receive your communication there.
Could you type into the chat what your vote is?
No, I think he said yes.
All right.
Okay.
Got a yes. So with a vote of 6-1, the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 4C is board consideration of a conditional use request in the R2A district for a 4-family dwelling unit on the property at 710 Fifth Avenue Northwest. Brandy, would you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Brink. And I don't think I actually got this one bookmarked, so I'm going to scroll over there quick. All right, so this is another conditional use request for the property located at 710 Fifth Avenue Northwest. You can see that it has three fronts with Compesca Boulevard, 6th Street Northwest, and 5th Ave Northwest. And so the applicant is seeking he's seeking the conditional use for a fourplex in the R2A district. So R2 is single-family attached residential district, and as by conditional use, you can grant a fourplex, but it has to be reviewed by the board. And as far as total lot size here, there is 19,000 square feet, where an R2A lot, the minimum is 6,000 square feet. So it is overly sufficient in size. And the applicant will be able to meet the required setbacks. We will apply the inline provision to some of the locations because the right-of-way for 5th Avenue is 100 feet, which is not typical for a local street. So there is sufficient boulevard as well to adhere to those requirements for the landscaping. So with that, I will open it up for any questions, or if Stacy has anything to add as well.
I just have one thing to add. This is kind of a unique design, and maybe the applicant can speak more about it. But essentially, it looks like two duplex structures with a small connection. I believe that was for like a utility or a laundry area between the two structures. So essentially, when you look at this, it's really going to look like two duplexes essentially, but there is this small area that is connected in between.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. When I looked at the application and the drawing, I thought that too. I thought this looks like two duplexes, and if this was two lots, two duplexes, or one duplex on each lot would fit. It would meet our standards and our setbacks and wouldn't even need to come before us. But
That's correct, yes.
is there any other questions from the board? And also, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone here to speak in favor of or against this item, please feel free to approach the mic or join us online. We did send out adjacent landowners to everyone, I'm assuming, and I'm assuming we didn't hear anything back.
That is correct. We have not received any phone calls or letters in regards after we've sent out to the surrounding property owners within 250 feet of the property.
Thank you.
I did talk to one just with some questions, but they weren't necessarily against, they just had the questions about having sufficient setbacks. So, and I was able to let them know that they will be able to be met.
Yeah, and actually the kind of the triangular portion of the adjacent to Compesca Boulevard kind of makes it so some of those setbacks are well above, or at least appear to be well above our minimums, so there'd be, looks like more green space than would be required.
I personally think it'd be a great improvement for the area.
One thing I wanted to point out too, just as a side note, if I could, Mr. Chair, the applicant is planning to install the sidewalk along 8th Street with this proposed development, should it pass this evening. And then we would be working with him to get a waiver of right to protest for any future sidewalk improvements in that area. And then, of course, our typical building permit review.
Thank you. The public hearing is still open. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor or against this item? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion and second for further discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Dargits Johnson,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Colhane,
Yes.
Spire, Ford. That was a yes. from
Yes.
Spire.
All right, with a vote of 7-0, the motion passes. Item 5 on the agenda is open public comment. Did we receive any, Brandy?
No.
Okay. Item 6 is new business. Do you have any new business?
None that I have.
Is there any from the board? Hearing none, I'll move on to item 7, old business. Any old business?
Nope, none that I have.
Any old business from anyone on the board? Hearing none, move on to item 8, motion to adjourn. Could I get a motion and a second?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Could I get a roll call vote?
You bet. Spire. Ford.
Yes.
Colhane.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
Dargits Johnson.
Yes.
We are adjourned.